Sundance 2018 may not have had the big hits like there was last year, but I will always take a stream of very, very, very good movies instead of like this one big hit that the festival may produce, unless that hit is like this crazy masterpiece. I was able to watch 25 movies at the festival this year, and while you can go to my top 5 right here at this point if that's all you care about, I want to cover the other 20 because even though they may not have been my favorites, they may end up becoming your favorites of the year, and that's really all that matters. So, I want to start off with Tyrel. I didn't hate any of the movies that were at the festival. This was the only one that kind of really disappointed me. It's the story of the only black dude who's invited to a party, but to me, this was like Microaggressions, the movie. There are points where Mitchell's character gets offended for things, and I'm like, what are you getting offended for? Especially when Michael Cera ends up coming up later in the movie, like halfway through. He's the one who really just makes the movie. He says more offensive things, and it's okay to laugh at what he says. It was like a movie about America made by someone who's not American and doesn't really get how the issues are going. I think it handles the situation very corny. Speaking of corny, it has a whole entire Russ song that they listen to in the movie. There is a point throughout the film where they use Warp Stabilizer from Adobe Premiere, and if you know Warp Stabilizer and it wobbles the back, you know that's bad filmmaking. So to me, it's just a stream it. This one won Best Screenplay at the festival, and I thought it was an intriguing character study, maybe too slow for some. The ending may not go anywhere for some. I thought it was okay, I thought it was intriguing, but if you really like the concept of this movie, I would definitely recommend checking out The Imposter, because not only is that one more interesting, but that's a real story. For this one, I give it a stream it. If you love Turbo Kid, I think you're going to love this movie. I personally need a little bit more than just 80s references to make a movie for me. This is an 80s slasher film about these group of kids, these teens who want to figure out who is the serial killer in their neighborhood. It can go one of two ways. It goes one of two ways. I've seen movies like The Guest, which I think does a concept like this a bit better. That's not spoiling anything. It's just the tone of it. I think it does it better. But again, if you like Turbo Kid, then I would highly recommend this being like a perfect Netflix stream. I think this was the best looking movie at the festival, hands down. The production design was insane. The whole tone, atmosphere of it. However, even the people who liked this movie had no idea what had happened by the end. So I'm looking forward to watching it again as a rent it, reading the book perhaps, because it's a little confusing. However, like I said, it is the best looking movie that I saw at the festival, and it has one of the craziest trip scenes involving a can opener. So for those of you who are looking forward to this movie, I think you'll absolutely dig it. Just remember not to eat first. Assassination Nation is like an episode of Black Mirror meets Mean Girls. The idea is insane. It's a town that starts getting hacked, so the whole town goes completely crazy. The idea, the editing is so frantic, the violence is up there, the banter is hilarious. And then David Escoyer at the end comes in and goes, you know what we need? A very serious dialogue, a monologue that happens at the end of the movie. And to me, I was like, I have no problem with movies having a message. But if the narrative and the metaphor are going to clash with each other, if you're going to take a dumb fun movie that has like the violence and excitement of, the purge scenes, I think it kind of gets muddy when you're trying to give this agenda. Other than that, I think the movie is a lot of fun and you should rent it with a group of people and just enjoy it. Mandy is that campy Nick Cage movie that meets like pretentiousness, that meets this auteur director, and they try to clash together. And for those of you who are looking forward to this, you're going to think it's completely nuts. I think the problem is with the first half, because the story is about Nick Cage going to find revenge upon this cult because they took his wife. Problem is, Nick Cage is on sleep mode for like the first hour of this movie. That could be because they want you to either get high or drunk for the second half, but the second half delivers. The poster chainsaw scene that you see, it delivers. The Nick Cage freakout that happens in a bathroom, it delivers. And my personal favorite is a scene dealing with a line about Nick Cage's shirt being ripped, which has entered my top favorite Nick Cage lines of all time. that delivers. So for those of you looking forward to this movie, I think you're going to love that second half. Just know that it's based off of a book, and they keep those lengthy monologue scenes just with a bunch of trippy visuals. A Futile and Stupid Gesture is the one Sundance movie that you can see on Netflix right now. I'm a big fan of David Wayne. This movie is about the inception of National Lampoon. I love movies like They Came Together. Highly recommend that movie. But even as a fan of David Wayne, I could say that this is probably not like the best introduction, and even not as funny, in my opinion, than a movie like that one. So I give it a rental, but it's really a stream since it's on Netflix. Damsel is a wacky Western that continues to prove that Robert Pattinson, for those of you who still hate him for Twilight or whatever it is, y'all need to grow up. This man knows how to act. The second act is the best part of this movie. Everything else around it, I think, can get a little bit tedious. You're either going to find it funny, how they last on some jokes and some shots. I found it a bit tedious at some points, which is why it's a rental for me. But Robert, Mia, their performances are fantastic. That little Sebastian horse that comes out is great. And there's a song that's going to be super catchy about a buttercup, which I found funny. I Think We're Alone Now does not play the song at all, but for those people who are going into the movie thinking, oh, it's an apocalyptic thriller, it's going to be a bunch of action, it is the most peaceful film, just following a lonely town where it's just Peter Dinklage in a library, and he is just at peace, just doing his thing. Then a person arrives, played by Elle Fanning, and things get a little bit different. It's still a slow burn, which a lot of people need to know before going into this movie expecting like an action thriller. It's a slow burn. It looks beautiful. The ending may not satisfy everyone. It may seem half-baked. I thought it was intriguing, and that's why I give it a rental. Madeline is the definition of using a movie to tell a story from a certain perspective. It's part of the next category, which to me pretty much means we're telling this story very, very differently. So for mainstream audiences, you're either going to dig it or you're not going to like it at all. The perspective in this movie is of an actress who may or may not be getting used by her theater teacher, and the way that it's told, edited, shot, how jarring it is. If you can handle the ending of Mother, then I think you're really going to dig this story, because as frantic as it's told, it really serves the purpose of the main girl's viewpoint. And for that, I would say check it out if you can and rent it. Lizzie was pitched as the lesbian retelling of the Lizzie Borden story, which if you don't know it, then I would say watch this movie, because I think it is an excellent retelling of it. Both performances are fantastic. That last third is fantastic. It is a very quiet movie, so I'd say rent it so you don't, disrupt anybody else in the theater, and so you can breathe. But I think it's a solid movie that continues to show that also Kristen is a fantastic actress and shouldn't just be, viewed from her Twilight days. Wildlife is a movie I was completely excited about. You got Zoe Kazan writing it, her boy Paul Dano directing it, you got Carey Mulligan, and then you also have Jakey Boo who's starring in this movie. There's absolutely nothing that this movie can go wrong with, but of course I'm going to view it from an unbiased perspective. It is a slow movie. It's a lot more simple than I thought it was going to be. It's a simple story of a simple family and what they go through. There's a lot of patience that goes into this movie, a lot more than I would like when it comes to not cutting away from shots. There are motivations, and I can't blame the movie for it. I would say it's the original novel, the original story. On some second half motivations that come from some characters, I would be like, that's pretty drastic. But other than that, it's a very beautiful looking movie. There's not enough Jakey Poo in the movie, but other than that, for those of you who are really excited to see it, obviously you're going to run to the theaters the moment it comes out. I can't wait to see it again, but as a rental when it gets released. Monster is based off of that book that I was given in junior high to read for an assignment, but I didn't. It's the story of a kid who gets caught at a bodega where a guy got murdered and he gets accused of being a part of it, and then the judge calls him Monster, which is the name of the movie. I think that the book works better because the student is a filmmaker, so he tells the whole story from the perspective of like interior, exterior. I think that works better in the book than it does, hearing him say it in the movie. I think the ending question that they leave you with isn't as ambiguous as they think it is. I think it's answered in the movie. But I did find it very entertaining to see Nas play a version of Red from Shawshank Redemption. I also thought that seeing A$AP Rocky just appear in his own clothes was great. He actually, I liked him in the role. I see and get why he's not making music, because the man wants to be an actor, and I'd say that he was in a pretty solid movie, which I give a rented to. Blaze is Ethan Hawke's biopic about the country singer, which is very heavy on the music. I think it's a little bit too long, but I thought that the way that they handled the music, the way that they have a montage playing with it so you get the sense of his story of him growing up, I thought was done really well. The lead got the best performance award, and I thought he did deserve it. At first it felt like an impression, but he's portraying a dude who mumbles a lot and tells all these different stories, so there's that. Plus Aaliyah Shawkat, I believe is how you say her last name. She's fantastic. But if you don't know his story, I think this is a solid movie with solid music, and I give it a junior price. American Animals comes from the director of The Imposter, which I mentioned earlier, and I highly recommend. But this is a movie that's told narratively and kind of through fiction, but that is also half a documentary, and you have all these interviews, and it's based off of a true story, which I didn't realize till halfway through the movie. It's about these college kids who pretty much are planning this heist, and whether it goes through, whether it's actually the way that it happened, is up to you to decipher when you're watching this movie. I think it goes from a comedy to a very moral, serious third act real quick, but I still found it to be very interesting. Ironically, MoviePass picked this up, even though, as a lot of people have noticed, MoviePass can't even distribute their own movie cards, so how are they going to distribute a movie? But if you're able to get your MoviePass card in time, then I would highly recommend using it to go see this movie in theaters when it's released. Blindspotting is about two dudes who are movers, and they live in Oakland, and they're dealing with all the hipsters that are coming in. This movie really just depends. Your love for it is just going to lie on the fact of how much you dig David Diggs rapping, because he does a lot of rapping in front of the screen. I like it, even though there are scenes where it gets a little cringy sometimes. I thought it was a very fast-paced, entertaining movie. The ending may not be for everyone when it turns into something else completely, but there is a moment within the movie where they kind of explain the title, and you see it in the poster, which I found ironic because a lot of people, with the questions they were asking, kind of missed the whole point of the title. But I give it a junior price, and I'm curious to know everyone else's thoughts on it. The Tale is that one movie you never want to see ever again. Laura Dern plays a documentarian, and she's trying to re-examine her childhood and her first sexual relationship that happened when she was very, very, very young. And the way that it's told is super intriguing because it's not just flashbacks. She's arguing with her flashbacks. She's telling it from different perspectives as she remembers something, so we're seeing the memories multiple times. But the thing with this movie is that it was picked up by HBO, which is perfect because maybe you'll be able to see it at home, which is the best way to view this movie because it was so uncomfortable to sit there during scenes that I know it's movie magic. I know it's editing. But it makes you so uncomfortable and it makes you want to puke because they go all the way. We're talking the whipping scenes in 12 Years, in Passion of the Christ. We're talking there are scenes in this movie that are going to make you very uncomfortable. And I think some people will not agree with them showing it the way that they did, but it's part of the impact. I give it a junior price, but watch it at home if you can. Bo Burnham is one of my favorite comedians. I love his show, Zach Stone. And this movie, I was super hyped for, and I do think it delivers. I think a lot of people are going to love this movie. I loved every scene dealing with the father. I think, you guys will see when you see the movie, the chicken nugget kid is one of my favorite aspects of the movie. I think the closer that you are to the girl's demographic, the better it's going to be. I think the whole motif of the video and how that leads up and payoffs at the end will make you cry. I wasn't crying, of course, but overall I thought it was a really good movie where really the only nitpick that I have for it is that I don't know how it's going to age a couple years from now because it's very heavy on modern references, and I know some of them will last. You see 80s movies, and 80s movies are the nostalgic ones. They keep the references that last. I don't know how many will stay in this movie, but other than that, it's a definite junior price, and you should check it out when it comes out. Now, these are the movies that I utterly adored. I don't have them in any specific order. I mean, you can see in an order where, it's number one, whatever. I loved all these movies equally, and I can't wait to buy all of them, and I highly recommend it to you guys. If you just want to go into these blank, I highly recommend going in not knowing anything. But these are my top 5, really 6. I get that a lot of movies get compared to other movies, and some people see that as a bad thing because they want everything to be its own thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that when you do that, you are paying respect to the movies that have set the bar. And movies like Moonlight, movies like The Florida Project have set a bar, and I think this movie, if you like those, We the Animals, you're going to adore. I personally loved it because it hit me even harder than those two. I think the 3 kids in this movie were fantastic, especially the main one. I think Raul Castillo, mark my words right now, this dude is the next big character actor. This dude is the next Benicio del Toro. This movie, I'll sound pretentious as possible, whatever, I don't care. Visually, it was fantastic the way they tell the story. The body heat scene, the transitions that are all scribbled on as they go from scene to scene. It was fantastic. It's one of those movies that you have to give into it. Some people I know don't like the movies that don't have a lot of story or are told in a specific structure. I say give it a chance because this movie won me over, and I love how the director pretty much pitched it. He said, I hope this movie means something to you because it means everything to me. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is a story about a bunch of gender-confused kids who get tossed to church camp. They have to sign a contract, and they're pretty much sent there to literally be straightened out. This won the grand jury prize. The banter from all 3 of these, the chemistry that they have is fantastic. There's a scene dealing with a scripture reading that will just tear you apart. Watch this as soon as you can in theaters. Monsters and Men is why you watch every movie possible, even when you think you're going to skip it. I went into this movie thinking it was going to be this one-sided perspective. Again, it's kind of like Monster. A guy who is actually Philip from Hamilton witnesses at a bodega a police officer shoot a black man. He gets it on tape. This thing was fantastic. This story is told kind of like Place Beyond the Pines in 3 parts, in 3 perspectives, each one following each other and each one influencing each other, even in reverse. The way that it handles the different points of view from the conversation I thought was excellent because the director had even mentioned that a lot of what you see in the movie is influenced from conversations, debates, discussions that he's had with people who he disagrees with, police officers who are his friend, and instead of ignoring what they had to say, he put it into the movie. Like, this man not only took those discussions to be able to flourish out the film, he even put some of these people in the movie. There are 2 scenes in this film. One of them is a dinner scene, and the other one is a conversation between a father to a son. And what I love about both of those scenes, the way that he had said, he's like, I want to open up a discussion. My way of doing that is through movies. And I think he does his job because those 2 scenes in particular, you watch those, and they evolve into a discussion after the movie. Do you agree with the father? Do you agree with the son? Can you see both points of view? The dinner scene, do you agree with the police officer? Do you agree with the friend? I mean, like, that to me is a successful movie when you talk about it after the credits. On top of that, I thought the director was dope. This dude stayed up till 2 o'clock the previous night to support the movie Blindspotting, woke up at 8 a.m. to come not only to the screening for the Q&A, but went to the waitlist line to let everyone know that he was going to make sure that they got into the movie, while a bunch of other filmmakers at Sundance, they just dip on their own showings. Of course, that doesn't affect how I view the movie because there are a lot of other really great filmmakers, very nice filmmakers, that their movies don't live up to it. But this dude, and just the way he composed himself, makes me want to support him even more. This is the big one. Hereditary is the best horror movie I've seen in the last decade. Like, I truly mean this. While I was watching this movie, my biggest worry was that it was going to get overhyped. By me. There will be people who are going to see this movie like a month later and then be like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, because you saw it a month later. I'm calling it right now. For those people who think they can guess the movie, for those people who say they weren't scared, they're lying, thieving adulterers at heart. This thing, for those of you who liked the Vivitch, for those of you who liked It Comes at Night, know that this movie goes above and beyond that. For those of you who hated those movies, know that this movie delivers in what you wanted those to deliver on. I'm telling you, this movie will ruin mouth clicks for the rest of your life. This movie will make you want to get baptized and anointed after you watch it. This is one of those movies that doesn't deal with those jump scares where like the sound mixer has to crank it up to 11 because an actor didn't see like who was right next to them. No. If you remember the scene in Insidious where that little boy's just hanging there, but they don't notice him, that scene in It with the librarian where she's just chilling in the background, but you don't notice it. This movie is freaking freaky because there are a bunch of scenes where you're just staring at the screen for like 10 seconds and then you notice something staring at you and that scares you because you're like, how long have you been there? Horror movies always strive to have that one WTF scene that people will talk about. This movie gives you that in the first 25 minutes. And then before it ends, it gives you 3 more. Colette deserves the Oscar talk that she's been getting. I don't understand how Alex Wolff isn't suffering from PTSD. And I hate the fact that you guys have to wait till June to see it because that means I have to wait to talk about it. And I just want to talk more about this movie. See it as soon as you can. I am a huge Lakeith Stanfield fan, and when people were telling me that Sorry to Bother You was like nothing you've ever seen before, I thought, whatever, I'm going to go into it skeptic. They were right. Like, this movie is why movies are made. Again, another cliche, but just visually the way it's told. I know that some movies are going to be a little too much to some people, the weirdness, they may not go with it, but when you see that one crazy, zany movie, and it just clicks with you, you're along with the ride. If you like my viewpoint on things, give this movie a shot because this movie was just, it was hilarious. It was crazy. I do not see another better satire coming out in 2018. And if there is, then that movie is going straight to the top because Lakeith Stanfield owns this role of a telemarketer who has to put on a white voice in order to be able to sell things and be able to move himself to the top. I thought it was great. Catch this in the theaters when you can. And we'll see if you dig that last third the way that I did because it's crazy. You know how everyone praises the first 10 minutes of Up because of all the emotions that it gives you in the story? I'm telling you right now, Search does that with its first 10 minutes as well. This is the film that takes place completely on a computer screen, and I know that some people are calling it a gimmick just because Unfriended did it. Other people are saying you take away that aspect and it's not an interesting story. It's beyond interesting. And to me, it gives every emotion that you want from a movie just in a different narrative telling. I'm not saying that there aren't points within the movie where it's like, yo, that window probably wouldn't have been left open, but the nostalgia that it gives you by running different programs on a computer screen and seeing the memories and all these different things that it does, the way it tells the story, how innovative, how great the editing is, makes it not one of the best Sundance movies because that can, vary by opinion, but it's my personal favorite. It may not be the best of the fest for everyone else, but for me it is, and I highly recommend you search it out when it comes out because I want you to experience it the same way. Just go into it as blank as possible and enjoy it. Other than that, those are my picks for the top movies that I saw at Sundance. I have another video coming up about, tips for Sundance because a lot of people want to go and they don't, know how to go. I'm not saying I'm a professional. I'm not Robert Redford, but if there's some tips that I can give from what I've learned in my mistakes, I'll have that in a video coming up. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on these movies, what you think about them when they come out, and anything else dealing with 2018 and this year of film. Till next time, see you guys later.